Let's call the meeting to order then, and this is the meeting of November 21st, recommended. Are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
Yes, we are.
I'm so glad we're all connected. I can see that. And so we'll move right on to bill number 2014-1, okay, for possible action. Amends ordinance number 6285 relating to the annexation of property to correct the zoning designation of that property. General location, the southwest corner of Farm Road and Grand Canyon Drive. This has been proposed by Flynn Fagg, who is not here.
I'll present it there.
Okay, if you would, please.
Val C., Deputy City Attorney. When this ordinance was adopted, it incorrectly showed the city equivalent zoning for the territory would be RE, and so we're following up with a correction to show that it's RPD4, and that's the way it should be.
How did that happen, if I may ask, Mr. Steve?
I think there were some problems with the GIS mapping, and they misread it, I think. I'm not quite sure how it happened.
But it was just an error?
I can answer
Please.
that. This project is being...
And can you announce yourself for the record, please?
Planning Department.
Sorry.
Planning Manager. This item is being corrected. When it was initially submitted by the owners of the property, they were bringing in a county project. It was designated as RE equivalent because the equivalent county zoning was RPD2. The county zoning, RPD2, is not really 2 units per acre. It actually can be much higher. And our equivalent would be 4 units per acre. There are some parcels that meet the requirement of RE, but there are many within this county development that do not. So we need to correct that. And there was confusion between the planning department and the developer of the site as to what they were actually bringing in. It was difficult to actually get the approval from the county to make that determination as the annexation was proceeding quickly through our system. So this will bring it into conformance so that we don't have RE zoning with really 4 units to the acre zoning. It would create a confusion there.
So this will sustain what level? How many to the acre?
It matches 4 units to the acre. The county allows you to measure to the center line of the street to include that as part of your development parcel. The city does not. The city believes that you can't live in the middle of the street, so therefore it shouldn't count. The county allows you to do that, to go all the way to, and this includes a 100-foot right-of-way. So some of these parcels include a large portion of street as part of the density. Our density is true density. Theirs is something else.
Artificial. Okay, any comments? Any comments on this one? Can we have a motion
I
then?
move for approval of Bill 2014-1.
Thank you. Motion in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that motion passes. I do want to mention, too, if, along with this one that's just passed, 2014-1, this particular bill and the last one, which is number 7, 2014-5, they'll be eligible for adoption at the January 22nd City Council meeting, which is tomorrow. The remaining bills, 2012-2, 3, and 4, won't be eligible until, they will be eligible at the February 5th City Council meeting, so just for the record on that. All right, we will now move on to agenda item 4, and this is bill number 2014-2 for possible action, eliminate specific business license categories for commercial dance studios, distressed merchandise sales, retail demonstration merchandise sales stores, and food caterers, eliminates charitable solicitation permits, and amends licensing regulations and fees related to outdoor payphones, professional promoters, and charitable or special events. This bill has been sponsored by Councilman Steve Ross, Ward 6. And Ms. Duddleston, if you would speak to this, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, Karen Duddleston, Business Licensing Manager. As you are well aware, the mayor and the council tasked us with going through all of our code to identify antiquated rules and regulations. And one of the areas that we've been working on with Councilman Ross were some of the things in our code that we no longer use. This is basically a cleanup ordinance. The first elimination, for example, is charitable solicitation permits. anyone that's going to solicit anything from cookies to popcorn to all of those youth organizations traditionally would come in and get a permit from the city to do that, whether it's telephone solicitations or door-to-door. It was originally to identify charitable organizations, to make sure that they really were charitable organizations. That's been replaced by the IRS and the state Secretary of State. So all of those organizations now have to register with those organizations. So that list is available to the public to know if they're dealing with someone that is an actual registered charitable event. So we would propose not to collect those permits, which we have very few, only 2 or 3 organizations at this point in time even come to us to file those. So it's antiquated at this time. Other ones, distressed merchandise sale is actually a special permit to end your business. So if you're going out of business, you're going to have an end of business sale, you would have to come to us to get a special permit or license.
To go out of business.
To go out of business.
Most reasonable.
And that hasn't been enforced in many years, so we don't have anyone in that category. And
Well,
we're
may I
proposing to
ask a
avoid-
question at this point rather than at the end? The purpose of that is to keep people from continually advertising going out of business
Right.
so that it doesn't harm or impair other real retailers who have to compete against that.
And I believe that may have been at that time. Unfortunately, we can't find in our records that we've had anybody in the last 20 years that has applied for that permit. So while we would send an enforcement officer out to address those issues should we get complaints, we may need to find another mechanism to do that.
Okay.
So really,
Yeah, I'm not enforcing our own
comment. No, I mean, actually, over the years, I have seen companies on their front windows and signs and flags saying, going out of business, 50% off, everything. And I wonder, in thinking of that, for recurring,
Well, that was the
Advertising,
problem.
yeah.
That was the problem.
so just a thought for you as
Still be a
that
problem.
gets reported.
We can see if we can address that somewhere else in the code
Perfect.
to
Good point.
make that a fine. The outdoor pay telephones, we had originally required them to be licensed individually. This was in order to keep track of those pay telephones. There was a lot of issues in the past with them being used for drug deals, those sorts of things. Pay telephones have virtually been replaced by cell phones. So what we're proposing to do is requiring payphone telephone company to keep a map, to provide that information should we need it, to know where it is, but license them as a company rather than those
Individually.
individual pay telephones. We would still require that they mark those pay telephones so that people know who to contact if there's an issue with those pay telephones.
And would they pay a fee, or do they pay a fee?
They do pay, they do pay a fee. And then we retain all the rules that allows them to be declared a public nuisance and for the city council to ask for them to be removed.
Okay.
So we're simply,
Your Honor, I got to enter on this one, too.
That's wonderful, you must have
I'm
eaten
sorry, I brought it up
granola.
again. I don't know why my complaints aren't reaching your office, but they sure do mine on these payphones as drug rendezvous points. We have one right behind the building here on that gas station property. It's a payphone, and it's a regular, you can watch it from my street, from my office. It's quite a circus around 5 o'clock. And there's a couple over on Charleston and Maryland Park, Charleston and the Boulevard. Going down the Boulevard, there's some down on the east part of it, I would say, around the 1700 block that are attractive nuisances. The only means I've had to be able to draw attention to the owners of these payphones is our ability to license them, or at least permit them.
and we are retaining the licensing of the companies and requiring them to keep a map of all their locations and provide it to us rather than trying to license every single individual one differently. So we are retaining all the regulations that allow them to be declared a nuisance and for them to ask, for the city council to ask for them to be removed. So those regulations are staying. We just have to admit that for the last 20 years, we haven't had accurate licensing of the individual locations and trying to map them ourselves. We need the companies to keep that information and to license them rather than trying to send out officers to scan street by street to find out where these are.
So once again, what would our leverage be over the company?
In the ordinance that remains is to require them to remove that payphone if they become a nuisance.
There's some,
Sorry.
it's not that easy to do, though, even with the current regime. If you know what I mean, I don't recall that they always have to comply.
I know.
And in fact, they don't sometimes.
I know there are very strict standards. I don't know if I can go through those or not, but there's strict standards on declaring them a nuisance and getting them removed.
Maybe there'll be some testimony from Metro or somebody. We could get some word on that.
And are they owned by, who's now the phone company, Sprint?
I don't.
How many are we
I would have
dealing
to
with?
check for sure. We have very few of them, but most of them are private providers. They're not so much Sprint or.
Yeah, they're not.
They're smaller.
Not somebody
Okay.
you'd know.
Well, and I think that's a really good thing, to know who they are, and then make sure that they understand the regulations, that this is what it entails, to mean declared a nuisance. So they can be removed, especially in the areas that Councilman Coffin might be mentioning.
Mayor,
Yeah.
as a mayor, or non-essential deputy city manager, we did have a lot of problem issues in days gone by, and we do have a nuisance ordinance that allows us to go out there and go through the entire process. I'll have code enforcement prepared to discuss this because they basically take the lead on that. They work very closely with Metro and determining which ones are nuisances and go through the process. But I will give you an update on that, Councilman.
Okay. 'Cause
That'd be great.
I have a feeling Councilman Barlow would also be interested, as well as Councilwoman Tarkanian.
Without question. And I think it's most important that whatever the regulations are that make it declared, whatever, which one and where it is, a nuisance, what are those requirements? That needs to be communicated, and obviously in our code enforcement information on the website.
And one more thing, the reason they don't do a lot of stuff on cell phones is because, you'd have to get a warrant and listen to that landline, whereas a landline, you can't monitor it very well without a warrant, so it's protected to a great degree. With cell phone, kind of blasts out there, it's monitorable. So that's why, for some people, maybe it's on the low end of the drug chain, they like to use these landlines, these little payphones.
Interested. And as I said, we're not trying to change licensing them and licensing the company. We're asking the company to keep the maps and make those available to us, rather than for licensing to try to identify them individually and keep up with the individual permit for each phone.
And it would be wise, that's in there, the chain of authority to whom you report, this is a nuisance on the corner of my block here. Where it goes, will that come through code enforcement and Metro then? Helpful. Okay, please continue.
Okay. Retail demonstration merchandise stores, we cannot find that we've ever had anyone licensed in that category. Commercial dance studios were an issue at one point in time, and at this point, we can't find anything within the last 15 or 20 years where commercial dance studios are those issues. They're very popular right now, and they run very much like any
In
other
business.
dance studio. And then the following permits, what we're proposing to do is we have a special event producer license and a charitable event promoter license. We're proposing to combine those. We have a lot of people that have to come in and get both licenses. If you're doing an event, that event might be for charitable purposes, or that event might be for profit purposes. But we're keeping the regulations for charitable promoters to make sure that they understand what their obligations are, and we're proposing to combine those two types of promoters. And then the highway solicitation permits, we're required by state law to keep those. We get very few of them because we refer them to the state highway department to get their permits. So all we're proposing to do is making sure that we work with Public Works, that those permits, the one or two that we do get, would be with that agency.
Who handles the street solicitors that are on every single corner in the city?
Mayor, Council, I think that falls under the jurisdiction of Metro. I think, I'm not sure if you can speak on that, but I believe it falls under the jurisdiction of Metro, and in particular in between the medians when they start the medians.
And they're not supposed to come off the medians, but they always do, wandering, I mean, really a danger. Whether it's coming off at Sahara, off the 15, or on any of the islands throughout the city. Thank you.
Sergeant Carmen Donegan with Metro Special Investigation Section. Generally, that's enforced under the traffic laws, so impeding traffic, or pedestrian and roadway.
Okay. So would that be, is that our city within the confines of the 135 square miles?
I believe it depends on what kind of streets that they're on. If they're on a city street versus a state highway, a lot of those main streets are state highways. So I know that some of them have to get a permit from the state of Nevada to be out there, and some of them have to come and work with us.
Well, most of them are homeless people.
But in those instances, it would be up to Metro who can be out there on those streets.
I don't have the current city and county code. I know that we used to have a code where if you were soliciting alms or begging, that we could go ahead and write a citation for that to get them out of these people out of these dangerous situations. And then we were told that we could not do that anymore, and I believe that was in the county. But I would
Is
have
that
to-
because of First Amendment rights they
I
have the
believe so,
right?
yes.
Can you find out and get back to me
Yes,
on that, and
absolutely.
counsel if they're interested?
Yes.
Because it seems we have more rather than less, and obviously I'm sure they haven't come in for a permit. But what are the rules and regulations to make it available? Thank you, I appreciate that.
Mayor, if
Yes.
Carmen leaves, is it possible city attorney could help on that? Because the begging, the provisions are under an order, at least at certain parts of this downtown area, right? We are not impeding right now, we're experimenting. Does that apply more than just the Fremont Street area? You know, the Fremont Street order we're under as far as not being able to, well, we've got a little bit of a setup on how to allow them to beg, but it in fact isn't working. We have the Swiss cheese effect going on right now. I'm sorry, Bell, if you weren't up to speed on that.
Well, I know about the performers. I don't know about the begging aspect of it. But we have rules that apply to the Fremont Street.
I just wondered if, okay.
As far as rights of way, the default is on city rights of way, you can't be in them unless you're maintaining or something. You just can't be in them. On state rights of way, enforced by the Highway Patrol, same thing. In a very limited circumstance, state law requires both state authorities and local authorities to allow median solicitation. Unless you're within the confines of that, you're illegal.
So once you step off the median into traffic,
Right, but of course,
Even if you're in the
like she says, state highways, which is all those that are 95, I-15, and things like Sahara, Charleston, all the major corridors are under the jurisdiction of the state, and those that are strictly city would be enforced by Metro. But yeah, the default is you can't be out there.
okay.
Whether anybody enforces it, I don't know.
Well, when they come up to my car, I always tell them, you're illegal out here, it's not bothering the drivers, besides which your life's at risk. Well, we're not responsible, go back up on the median. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure our community doesn't realize that either. Thank you.
What symbol do they give you when you say that?
Smile.
Oh, a smile.
Most of them look very nice and smile, go to the
Not
next car,
involving a
because they
finger
figure
or
well,
an
she's
arm or
going to
anything
stiff
like
us,
that.
go to somebody else. So let's have a motion on this then? Or was there one more?
No.
No, I think you did cover it.
Do we have to have an amendment based on the discussion we had on anything?
I don't
We're okay.
believe so.
I mean, I think we're okay as far as, based on your representations
We'll
on...
bring back in our general code for anyone that has sales or something like that.
I was thinking of
to-
payphones.
Payphones, like I said, we're not removing any of the regulations. We can certainly check on
Okay.
making that process simpler. We can certainly do that. We can work with Metro on that. And then we'll bring back in our general code that anyone that is providing sales that continually advertises going out of business, that they cannot do that. See what we can work out with the city attorney, and then bring that back under civil penalties,
Right.
that we could issue penalties if they continually do that.
So this would be on the 5th of February, assuming it's passes
Well,
out.
with
Yep.
that- with those representations, I will move for adoption, or approval, committee approval.
Aye, 3 of us. All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. And let's see. And our next one is it 2014-3, possible action, delete certain, is that correct? Yes. Work card requirements in multiple chapters of the LVMC. Title VI amends multiple chapters of the LVMC. Title VI related to work card requirements and establishes a hearing panel to hear work card appeals sponsored by Councilman Beers. The bill will eliminate or revise work card requirements for employees in various licensing categories, also establish a hearing panel to hear work card appeals as authorized by state law. So if you would, Ms. Duddleston.
Thank you. Again, for the record, Karen Duddleston, Business Licensing Manager. We were tasked by Councilman Beers to work on an ordinance to try to bring the work card requirements in the city of Las Vegas as closely aligned as we could with those in Clark County, so that those working in the urban area have the same rules to function under those businesses and those employees. And we have put that proposal before you. In addition, under state law, I think it was about maybe 8 or 10 years ago, there was a provision passed in the state legislature allowing the city council to create a hearing panel, if they so choose, to hear those work card appeals rather than coming directly before you, before the cameras, and in that setting to appoint a hearing panel of your choosing.
Another layer.
Hear those appeals. So what this ordinance does is bring those two into alignment. What we would see in particular, the differences is amusement parks, apartment staff, certain employment agencies, carnivals under liquor, a waiter and a clerk. So the 7-Eleven clerk or a waiter or waitress would no longer need a work card. A pawnbroker. Pawnbrokers are all secondhand dealers, and they're required under secondhand dealers, so that is simply redundant. So everyone in those establishments under secondhand would still have to have a work card. Peddlers, solicitors, and temporary merchants and martial arts instructors. Your martial arts instructor section of the code applies to only certain martial art instruction agencies. So it's only the ones that are completely private. If you happen to have a business or a not-for-profit that works in a YMCA, a community center, a Boys and Girls Club, a church, any of those, you're not required to have work cards if you're a martial arts instructor, only if you're in a private business setting.
Since Councilman Coffin and I took office 2.5 years ago, I'm wondering, one, why this has come up, because it hasn't seemed broken to me, what this work card issue, number one. Number two, we're adding another layer and another panel to do another job, knowing how you presented, and that either the owner has to write a letter or appear on behalf of the applicant for the work card. Can you explain the background why this is, I know Councilman Beer's comments, but wondering about it further. Has it been broken since in these 2.5 years? Why are we changing something that's not broken?
I think this came out of some of the appeals that were before you, specifically for the waiters and the 7-Eleven clerks, where there were businesses that operate in multiple jurisdictions that were trying to move employees from one business to another. And what they found was they got caught in that the rules are different in different jurisdictions.
But if I might, wouldn't it work that if they had a work card out in the county somewhere at some Cane's or somewhere, isn't there some way to fix that so that if they have a work card in one jurisdiction, we honor that in the city? rather than create another layer
The county does not require work cards for these.
for these particular areas?
They may require work
Well,
cards.
the example, I mean, I think one of the reasons why this came out is, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, there was a lady at the city council, she wanted to work across the street, I think, and she didn't need a work card in the county, but she had to come to the city to get a work card to work across the street to get another job, and the work card was denied. And then, she has to come before the city council in a public setting, in front of cameras, and she's crying because she wants this work card, and I thought that was silly. So I think the purpose of this panel is to not drag people in front of a public hearing, a public body, to ask permission for a work card when it could be done in a more, would this be a public meeting, this panel?
Yes, but it wouldn't be,
But it would be in
it
here.
would be a camera.
Yeah, it would be in here.
Why couldn't it be through the office, through the business licensing and work card office, and handle it that way rather
Well, it has to
than?
be a panel. The legislature insisted on it being a panel, and once you have a panel doing government business, you're subject to the open meeting.
But you're not in the city council
Right.
chambers.
You're not in chambers.
There's a television, there isn't 100 people sitting out in the audience watching you. I think it's a better setting for our citizens who are asking for an appeal. So I think this is I think the panel's a better idea than dragging people in front of the city council. And I think a lot of these they don't need a work card. If they don't need one in the county, why should they have one in the city? I guess that's one of the issues in this ordinance.
Can I speak up on that?
Certainly.
We have to maintain our own standards, and the county is not a city, and the city has a different set of standards because of its typical condensation of people, its concentration, of people. Sometimes you have to have different rules for downtowns versus an urban or a suburban kind of an area. Let's take a look at it from this perspective too. I'm not totally in disagreement with you, but they're coming in here on an appeal. They've already met with our staff, and they've been told privately that they can't have it or there's a reason. And so it's their option to bare their soul or to come before us, and of course it's our discretion as to how deep we want to go in the questioning process, but I find those reports valuable. Now then, I'll say this much, there was an example, but I believe you've covered it on the martial arts, where we had a guy with prior offenses against children in California, I think, and he wanted to set up his own business, and we did allow it, as I recall, with a very short leash on him. But the point was physical contact occurs, and so there's some things about some of these occupations that meet the eye. Photography business. Well, photography can mask a whole bunch of things. So, these evolved over a period of time. So we certainly should have a need for them. The question becomes do they get into public? And I think that the fact that they are appealing a decision that's already been made at the level of staff is their protection. And then if they choose to waive it, it's their business. They want to make their case despite their background, because maybe there is a good case to be made. And if they have an appeal, if they have an appealing case, they get our support. Almost every time, I can't recall somebody being turned down that did fight all the way to
2.5 years.
Yeah. So
I just wonder at it, and then just another layer of government, my goodness. This is something, it just needs 2.5 years. I can't go back further than that. And to the cumbersomeness of the process. I know during my husband's tenure, he had insisted there be either a letter or an appearance by the owner of the entity where this work card is in question. And so at this point, it seems to be in every case that I recall, and with your recommendation and then the timeline on those cards. So just my thoughts. And I can't recall any issue to you any time that you've come before us that it hasn't worked smoothly and to the benefit of the applicant or to the city. And I agree, I think the city's responsible for the city, and the county's responsible for the county. And we quite often lead the way for the county, not the other way around. So I have questions on this, absolutely. So do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay.
I'd like to talk to the sponsor. I wish he isn't, I wish he was here.
I have to leave.
Is he prohibited from being here because of an open meeting law prohibition? Because he's in the building.
Right, if he's going to be talking about it, one of you would need to leave, because then we have a quorum with city council. And it
How
hasn't
about-
been posted as a city council meeting.
Well, how about if we refer it back and not decide on it, and just refer it back to council for consideration? Can you do that?
Sure.
I think that would be fair, because I'd like to hear him speak to it as well, I think, and I'd like to hear both of your comments as well, and I certainly defer to Mayor Pro Tem, who obviously sees something that's significant. So can we just recommend it, would that be all right with you? When would that go
If we
then?
approve this, then this goes to the city council.
But you could send it along without a recommendation, and
Okay.
the council will
That's fine.
hear it on the 5th of February.
Okay,
That's fine.
okay. Is that all right with you? Okay, so that would be for the 5th, it will go back to council without recommendation, and we concur, the three of us, in that.
Do I need a motion for that? So I'll make a motion to send this to the full city council without a recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. I concur with that. It passes, and so it will be.
Well, is there an AG opinion on that specific case? Is there an AGO that specifically talks to the idea that a member of a governing body cannot testify if that means it would create a forum?
There was an open meeting law opinion by the AG's office regarding a school board meeting where more than a quorum was in attendance, and they didn't all participate. And they said because they didn't participate and they were just there was not a violation. The implication was that if they had participated, there would be a violation. But we don't have an opinion specifically on point. I just don't think we want to even tempt anybody.
No, we could ask for a bill to clarify it, though, couldn't we?
But it would take a personal opinion in that case, then it violates the open, because it would be whoever it is, their bill, so they're a proponent of it, which then we have gotten into the mess of it.
Yeah, if they were just testifying,
Or reading.
the problem is it looks like they're part of the deliberation. That generates a complaint, whether it's legitimate or not, and I think we're trying to avoid complaints wherever possible.
Well, I think on the other hand, sometimes you have to confront the complaints in order to be able to exercise government. You can't govern.
Yeah, I think there's some of you that feel that way, and others of you that don't. So
I know, I think we should take it to the legislature, if there is an AGO on that then.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item 6, bill number 20144 for possible action, amends, thank you, Ms. Duddleston, amends the Uniform Development Code to establish a means of allowing a site with development approval entitlements to obtain separate concurrent approval for temporary development. This is proposed by our Deputy City Manager, Scott Adams. The bill will amend the Unified Development Code to establish the means of allowing a site with development approval entitlements to obtain separate and concurrent approval for temporary development. Under normal circumstances, a parcel is not allowed to have more entitlement approval for more than one type of development. This bill will allow a site to have concurrent approvals, one for temporary and one for long-term development, subject to limitations designed to manage and resolve the concurrent approvals. Please.
Good morning, Madam Mayor. Doug Rankin for the record, the Planning Department. The City Manager's Office asked the Planning Department to draft a bill to allow for temporary development of parcels that have already received a full entitlement. The idea behind it was that there are some parcels that are not ripe for development yet for their major project, but would like to do a temporary development for up to 5 years. This ordinance would allow such a development to occur while maintaining the other entitlement upon the parcel. The temporary development would be subject to only a 5-year approval, and then after 5 years, it would have to come back for either an extension or it would terminate, and the original development would then become the primary development again on the project.
How did you arrive at 5 years, or how did Mr. Adams arrive at 5?
I don't know. That was the request of the city manager's office for 5 years. As you know, our entitlements for permanent developments are good for 2 years, at which time they have to seek an extension of time upon that in order to see if they're still entitled for development at that point.
Is there any conversation that could be had with Mr. Adams to find out why it's not in that same compliance?
Yes, we can definitely let him know that was the main question, is why the 5 years versus a possible shorter time period that coincides.
Especially if it's temporary.
As in a temporary project. Also, the bill contains a component, if the primary entitlement goes away, the temporary entitlement will need to come back through for approval to become a permanent entitlement, because there may be concerns that temporary developments may come forward and say, well, we'd like to waive all the landscaping requirements and all the half street improvements that we're doing for our project, because we're only temporary before we build the permanent project. And that would avoid gaining a temporary development that would become a permanent development with all the waivers that were granted based upon it being temporary. And it would have to come back through the site development.
I would question the length of time something's temporary with different conditions to what the ultimate end is. And so, but would defer, and I don't know where I would go with that. But Councilman, please, comments, whatever you have.
Well, what's an example of a temporary project being built? I'm not sure what that looks like.
I'm not familiar with a temporary development project versus a permanent developed one.
Are you building half the building?
I guess the container park would be an example of a temporary project.
The
Well, a parking lot.
modular across from the container park, where they have the modular trailers at the learning center,
The Learning Center.
isn't that part of the temporary?
The Learning Center is a construction site tied to development permits located for the container park. It possibly would allow the Learning Center to come in and get entitled as a temporary development with trailers if this bill were adopted. That site does currently have a mixed-use high-rise project approved for it. It's been on the books since 2007, I believe, and has not yet developed.
So these temporary projects, do they come before the city council for approval?
Yes, it's
do?
required to
Okay.
have final action by the city council for a temporary project, where a permanent project is entitled.
Well, if you have an issue with the year, I guess I can make a motion to go to obey this to the next recommending committee, if you want
Have
to.
we had it taken public comment yet, or? you opened it up?
Oh, it is, or is it public? Comment on this. Please, come forward and state your name.
Doug Mason. I'm here specifically for this bill. I found it interesting that the Ambassador site was entitled for a tall building, but now they've made it a parking lot. Is it no longer has those entitlements? I mean, is there anybody but the downtown project that we're doing this for? We're changing the law for a reason. Is there anybody else? Is there another developer besides us?
Other developers have contacted the planning department and expressed interest in this bill to allow them to do temporary developments where they have large projects entitled. I have been contacted by others besides the downtown project.
Thank you.
You know, Mayor, if I may, I think next door for a city, they're entitled to do some kind of office building, but they're going to do a parking, level parking just for temporary until the demand's there that meets the demand for office space, or additional office space.
Doug Rankin, once again. We do have a temporary parking lot within the downtown Centennial Plan. There have been many entitled over the past year and a half since that was adopted. So we do address parking lots as a temporary use where the entitlements for the permanent use would not expire. Well, I don't know if they expire or not. I would defer to the city attorney if there's no how temporary would work currently under our code versus permanent.
Well, one question I would have, if it's a parking lot with a future that's already determined, that's one thing. And that we would give them a certain length of time to get their project underway or be able to review it and extend it. To me, I think of modular buildings being placed temporarily for 5 years, with waiving all the landscaping for all those people who live around there and other businesses. That doesn't sit well with me. 5 years is too long a time to waive landscaping, waive all these, unless it's specific to nothingness, which is that makes sense over there until that funds. Now, how many years do they have that license on that property for parking lot?
Temporary parking lots are for 3 years.
There's
We
another.
do that administratively in the planning department. They do have to provide one of 4 types of development improvements to get that administrative approval. Either the centennial fence, perimeter landscaping, internal landscaping, and there's a 4th one, which eludes me right now, but most of them are doing the centennial fence.
And 3 years.
And 3 years.
So why don't we be consistent and just do 3 years?
You can definitely
Yes,
amend the
that-
bill if you so desire and recommend 3 years
For temporary.
for a temporary development. There is a provision in here for a one-time extension of the temporary development as part of this ordinance, which would allow the temporary use to be extended for one more time. It would not be allowed to extend beyond that. So 10 years maximum under the current bill.
Mayor.
Yes, please.
On this issue, on parking lots come to mind, of course, everybody, and a good reason is because our landscaping requirements for the full entitlement are very extensive, very expensive, and it's like if you want to go into business and make the typical vacant lot look half decent, a parking lot will serve if it has some landscaping. So we've been allowing some landscaping, but not the full extent of landscaping that we require for a permanent development. But correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, that in fact is the case, right? We're in business with people now. If they want to put up a parking lot, we'll go into business with them and share half the revenue.
That is correct, yes. So there are quite a few of those temporary parking lots that have been approved, and they're providing one of the 4 development improvements, but not the full Centennial Plan improvements.
Right.
The parking lot.
Right, because we know that it's a short-term use. And
Of 3 years.
well, I don't know about the length of time.
It is 3 years for a temporary parking lot. You can't exceed it.
But we haven't tried to
Council if you
stick
need to.
a huge amount of capital investment on them because they would never pay back in 3 years.
Just amend it with 3 years.
Correct, and that was the consideration by the council when they considered temporary parking lots as part of an ordinance.
Yeah.
To allow them to have something other than just dirt.
Yeah.
Have a temporary parking lot until
It's-
such time as full development comes forward to make those items principal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Steed, please.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask Doug. Doug, I remember before this was introduced, there was a suggestion made that it be limited to the downtown Centennial Plan area. Do you know if that's still being requested, or?
That is not being requested by the drafter of the bill. That was a recommendation by the planning.
Okay.
And the drafter of the bill made various recommendations to draft the bill. This is the bill that was generated out of those conversations.
Okay.
Not your office.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll move for approval of the ordinance with the change from 5 years to 3 years.
Okay.
Is that all right?
That
Comfortable?
would be both the initial period and the extension period for 3 years instead of 5.
3 and 3.
Because right now it's 5 and 5.
3 and 3? Or 3 and 1? I'd like to,
Whatever.
why don't we just leave it open with an extension? An appeal, they can come back for an extension if they need it and deal with it at that time. Can't we just say make the time period 3 years?
The initial one, and then not have a limit on the extension.
Right, because...
I don't know how that sits with Mr. Adams. I'd hesitate to have it be open-ended when there was a desire to limit it to 10 total, and now have it...
To me, then it's not temporary at all.
Right.
I mean, to me, what I understood from Doug was 3 years with a 1-year extension. That keeps it under the 5, because at 5, it's permanent to me.
Mayor, the way it's written right now, if I'm reading it right, is you get the 3 years and then they have to come back and reapply for the other 3 years. years for an extension, and it goes before.
Oh,
the
that's
council.
okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's
and it's
fine.
only, once again, Doug Rankin, that does limit that we do have various trailers out there that have been approved as temporary. You may be seeing one of those again. They have 5-year reviews on them. Some of them will be coming up for their 5th review. 25 years is a temporary trailer.
Isn't it?
And those will be coming forward. Usually, as council members, you don't see them in your first term. Usually your second term, you get to see those. I know Ward 4 has one. As a matter of fact, Ward 4 has quite a few, and they'll be coming forward that have long times where they've been temporary trailers for a very long time.
Sitting in the same place?
Setting in the same place. The last one that came forward was the Culinaries temporary trailer, if you remember, right, Councilman
Yeah,
Coffin?
that's right.
But that was only their second request.
And they decorated it.
Yes, and they actually add some amenities to it. Once again, there is a saying.
So I think that's fine, the way it reads. Is that all right with you?
Three.
Permitted? 3, and then they come back for an
Or another
extension of 3.
Okay, that's my motion.
Okay, there's a motion, okay? Yea or nay?
Well, okay, I just wondered about the practicality of it. I'm just thinking, didn't somebody say we should have this brought back to us? No, really, I'm thinking, what about the long-term aspect? If the financing is, or the search for financing is based on the entitlement for the long term, does a 1 year mess that up on the permanent?
No, it's 3 and 3.
3 and 3? Okay, 3 and 3 is fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all in favor, aye?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carried. So we'll go right on to, what time is it? Oh, I have to go to the county commission. Mayor Pro Tem, can you take over on this one and the public hearing piece? And I'm sorry, I'm over for more cops.
Okay, bill number 2014-5 for possible action, annexation, ANX 50680, property location located on the southwest corner of Doral Lane and Beulah Street, petitioned by D.R. Horton, acreage 5.7 acre zone RD, sponsored by Councilman Ross.
Yes, this is the standard owner-initiated one parcel annexation. Recommend approval.
Public hearing, anybody wish to be heard on this item? Seeing none, Councilman Coffin.
I move for approval.
Move for approval? Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Go to item number 8, citizen participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the committee. No subject may be acted upon by the committee unless that subject is on the agenda and is scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, come to the podium, give your name for the record. The amount of discussion on any single subject as well as the amount of time and any single speaker is allowed may be limited. Any citizen participation? Seeing none, I'll close that and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.